Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Film Flashback. This is Matthew, as usual, along with Nick, and today we are joined by good friend and friend of Handlebar TV, of course, John Hagley from John and Nick's Pick Six with John and Nick, as you might have watched during football season. And today we've decided to flash back to an incredible movie, in one way or another, from 1988. This is the famous Jean-Claude Van Damme joint, Bloodsport.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
Frank is going to fight in the Kumite, and we're here to stop him.
An awesome human weapon who infiltrates the Chinese underworld to enter a forbidden competition, and only one will triumph. Now I will break you. International martial arts sensation Jean-Claude Van Damme in Bloodsport, the true story of the ultimate champion.
Isn't that a gem? What we Bloodsport. Oh, man. Bloodsport is it's a movie with a pretty straightforward plot. It's about a man who's in the American military. He was an immigrant to begin with. I'm glad they explained his accent. Jean-Claude Van Damme's breakout role. He trains to be an excellent martial arts fighter, and he goes to Hong Kong for a secret tournament where the best fighters of the world battle it out in a vicious brawls in a secret tournament to see who's going to be the best fighter in the world. And that's kind of the whole plot of the movie.
I mean, that is it.
In case you were worried about spoilers from a movie from 1988, I'm sorry, I just spoiled it. That's the whole film.
So I have my first note. First of all, hello everyone. This is one of my favorites from being a kid, and the things I liked about it as a kid are still good. I think the fight scenes are really good. The story wise. Is there a simpler story than Bloodsport?
Well,
I mean, I watched the 1934 movie today, and it was just pretty much it was along the same lines. So
I'm looking at this going like, all right, if you're a studio and you're gonna make Bloodsport, you're like, who's our demographic? You're like, well, guys who drink beer. Like, what do guys who drink beer like? Short commercials. All right, well, it's got to be short. And easy to understand. Okay, yeah, short, easy to understand. You know, it's the only thing from this movie that I think is missing from like your Budweiser, like Hooters demographic is you would think there'd be like a strip club scene.
Right.
That's the only thing that is like you would think they would add in this movie is like somehow added more like scantily clad women in it because that's clearly to me what they're going for.
So the reason. So that's not in there. So Jean-Claude Van Damme plays the character of Frank Dukes. He is squeaky clean in terms of character in this movie. So no, there's no strip club scene because he is kind of like a perfect somebody. Oh yeah. And so there isn't a scene in there that shows him really having that kind of humanity, the flawed humanity. I mean, yes, he's overcoming a struggle, but it's like trying to climb Everest. It's a hell of a challenge, but it's not like he's got flaws or demons to deal with.
The straightest edged character you've ever seen in your life. Except being AWOL.
Yeah. That's what remember the one character she says, you break the rules sometime, don't you? Aren't these two military guys looking for you? I'm like, that's that's the closest we get to him doing something he shouldn't do.
That's a stretch.
Like in his whole life. So this movie is, I think it's more montage than movie. Mm-hmm. There's like 6 serious montages in this movie. I counted it. You could make like a drinking game out of it. The first moment of the movie is a montage. Mm-hmm. And as John pointed out while we were watching it, it goes directly into, is this the longest flashback in film history?
The longest flashback in film history, over 10 minutes long.
Yeah.
It's like almost 11 minutes.
Oh my God. You know what struck me as odd, and that's why I brought up the thing about who's the demographic is like not only is this movie only an hour and a half, let's remind the audience what happened 20 minutes ago in case they forgot. like
over and over again.
Hey, in case you forgot, they're still at this tournament. It's like, yeah, we've been watching the movie, but like the flashbacks are just.
That's almost like they expected the movie to be watched on TV. Because a TV show is constantly reminding you, just like a radio talk show, constantly reminding you, hey, you're back with so-and-so on the radio we're talking about, because people tuning in at all different times. It's almost like they knew that was where people were going to see this movie.
We're back
TNT.
in the commercial. Yeah, here it comes. This is what happened when Frank Dukes was a kid.
All right. Do you guys want to get into Frank Dukes yet? The actual
Go
Frank
for
Dukes?
it.
Oh, yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, because this is a true story, everybody.
No,
well,
They tell you over and over again that this is super true.
All right,
all
imagine
really
living in a time, let's call it like prior to the internet, where you could get away with saying that you're like an 82-time champ. I don't know how many times this guy's champ. This is supposed to be a real story based on Frank Dukes. All these stories he told people about winning these secret tournaments that no one knows about. You know what my thought was watching this, especially reading about like Frank Dukes and like, so it turns out everything in this movie is made. Like there's no witness ever fighting in these secret tournaments. He was never in the CIA. It reminded me of Chuck Barris. If you remember the Chuck Barris, they made a movie about that too. What was the Chuck Barris movie? So Chuck Barris made game shows. He made the Gong Show. He made and evidently he was a CIA operative. So he came out with this autobiography. It's called "Because of a Dangerous Mind." It was the name of the movie. Sam Rockwell's in it, but it's all about Chuck Barris. All of a sudden came out with this autobiography where not only was I creating game shows, I was a CIA operative. And people were like, "Oh my God, he was? That's crazy!" Like you can't prove anything. Like imagine
exactly.
living in a world where like no one can fact check. Be like, "Oh, John, you won a 22 underground Muay Thai tournament. Let me just pull up YouTube real quick and see if I can find it." It would never happen now.
Nope, can't
No
find
cameras
it.
allowed.
And even still, there had to have been some recording of it, some articles on it. Even Janice was there to write about it. Where's her article in the real life? It's not there.
That is true, actually. That is funny because in the story, in the context of the movie, she does make it to the tournament.
Yeah, multiple
times. Did she not write the article? Where's the
article? She had a recorder.
Yeah,
made that pretty clear.
Recording.
We got some sound in there somewhere.
But
why would you not confiscate that?
I mean, real fast. Why doesn't she go back to America with them? I just had to jump the whole thing. I just was like, why? Sorry, when we were talking about Janice.
Exactly, because she has to go to Tokyo for a secret underground sumo tournament.
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
Right.
There's a lot of things that in this movie strike me as odd. John, I got a hypothetical for you.
Give it to me.
How many of the fighters in this movie do you think you could take? Like if you entered the tournament.
I'd say 3/4, maybe 7/8. I would just wear them out by running in circles more than anything. We just play real one game of chicken.
Yeah, the mat is inverted, so he'd be on like a skateboard, like back and forth.
But only on the last match is it inverted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah, the only time that it's inverted is for the final.
I was wondering. I was like, did I miss something?
No, because it's right as he wins and Chong Li goes like this. He says, "Prepare the match for the final match."
Yes, exactly.
I think we were kind of going all over the place, but
yeah, sorry, with the Janice thing,
we always go all over the place. So let's just start right off the bat with JCVD, the Muscles from Brussels. This was his first movie, and I read a quote where this is one of his favorite movies that he did.
Oh yeah.
Can you imagine there was a movie he did that he doesn't like? I don't imagine going like. Except there is a story, and I was thinking about this. I'm like, of course he likes it. Like he did the edit, evidently helped with the editing on this. There's a long take of his ass hanging out, where it looks like you're literally waiting for someone to go action, and there's like an extra beat with his ass sticking out. A beat, pulls his pants up, and then walks away. It's like the butt shot. Like, is that? Was that necessary? And so I was trying to think of movies that he didn't like. Are you familiar with John, for those of you who don't know who are watching at home, John has some experience wearing a costume as a major figure. I don't know if I'm breaking news here, but the King, the Burger King.
Oh, the King, yes.
So have you heard the story about Jean-Claude Van Damme playing the Predator movies, and they made this to make the story as quick as possible. They made a red Predator costume. It looked like a lobster, and Van Damme was under the impression he was going to be in this like sweet costume where he could go do all these martial arts. He shows up to set, and he's got like a foam red, stupid looking costume, and wanted to quit every second of the Predator.
I wouldn't blame him, but I mean, listen, if you just came off of Kickboxer or Lionheart or Renegade, you're not going to want to jump into a red suit. You're going to be. I want to show my muscles here,
dude. If you're gonna get up and work out for 8 hours a day, you're gonna need some shots of you with your shirt off. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of eating nothing but broccoli for a year. Is like you need for a lifetime. Yeah.
You don't want to be quarantined with a guy only in broccoli. I'll tell you that.
No. Nope.
That's the whole. But that's Jean-Claude. That's Jean-Claude Van Damme's whole career. So like he was like destitute, poor. I mean as much as any whatever normal European person could be. And then he gets to the he basically decides I'm going to be an action movie star because he's looking at all through the 70s. He's looking at other people making big time movies where it's not just niche, or if it's niche, it doesn't mean that you can't make some actual money. And so he basically finds the guy who's the main producer for most of these big action films. He tracks him down, and then he just kind of does a split for him and shows him his muscles. And he's like, I'm a star next. And the guy's like, Chuck Norris is a star. You're not, and he's like, and then he just like begs him until the dude just breaks down and goes, fine, you can have Bloodsport. That's what happened.
That's yours. You just take that one.
Well, you know what though? I saw and I didn't look at the producer, but I know the director of this movie the guy's name is Newt Arnold.
Nice.
And he hadn't really directed anything. But he was the second AD on like Godfather 2 and some major motion pictures. And so I'm curious if this was like a passion project of his, because the budget was $1.5 million, and it made
That's a big
60
budget for 88.
It is and it isn't. Like it is, but it's not like other action movies like a Die Hard type would although that was a little later, but. It brought in $65 million at the box office.
But here's the thing: you can make a movie.
Yeah.
You can make a movie like this for $1.5 million because you have the set that you make for the Kumite, and then like half the movies on that set. Yeah. It's like
half the movie's a flashback. So they're like, hey, you know what? We're only gonna have to shoot an hour-long movie because we're just gonna flash back for the other third. But
that's the other thing is like it's flashing back to scenes they've already shown.
Right.
So it's like this movie's like 88 minutes or something like that, and it's like that's only 75 minutes of actual new footage.
Yeah, and the training and all the young stuff is in Hollywood. Everything, all that's in Hollywood, so they'll just go on location for about 2 or 3 weeks to shoot the externals.
Speaking of Hollywood, a small segue. We all three of us live in Los Angeles. Been out here all for close to 10 years. John a little bit longer, I think. I saw Jean-Claude Van Damme one day. I was on the corner of Santa Monica and La Brea. I was leaving that Starbucks by the Target, and I'm sitting there. It's probably like 9 a.m, and this red, I think it was a Ferrari or Corvette convertible pulls up, and I'm just waiting to do the crosswalk. I'm just kind of looking casually. I look over, and this guy turns his head, just whips it over, and we make eye contact. And it's Jean-Claude Van Damme, and I don't say anything. I just look at him, and I give him like the nod. I give him a little nod, and he just looks back at me and gives him the nod. Light turns green, and he goes, and like I think it's like, man, that's JCVD, man.
If you were if you were him, if you were Jean-Claude Van Damme, why would you not do that at like every stoplight you pulled up to? Just purposely whip your head to the side.
He's
See
probably
if there's
just doing
anybody
lap.
there, just to make somebody go, what? And then, just Bill Murray them.
Oh my gosh. I'm actually a little jealous. I'm not gonna lie. It's pretty amazing.
So when we flash back to these movies, sometimes I talk a lot about how the movie is of its time and how it feels of its time. And this one, it's the most 1988 movie ever. When it comes to the way that it's done, there's so much that gets like ruined by parody later on. You've got like Team America World Police starts parodying a lot of the stuff that was just in every action movie, and then it was like, well, great, we can't do it anymore. So now when you go, if you were to have to make this movie today, there's things that are cheesy that you'd have to cut out now. Like some of the music is unbelievable. Whole thing made on like a Casio, and it's just wonderful. But like the sound of those fake 80s drums, these super gated things, and it's like you can't. It almost feels. It gets so close to being. Are they kidding? Are they kidding right now? Because it's over the top.
While we were making fun of it, it doesn't. Or while we were watching it or reviewing it, I guess if you were, while we were reviewing it, it wasn't. I was just so still enthralled in the movie. I just kept engaged in it, even though it was still kind of funny talking about it. You just were, oh, this is what's going to happen next.
Well, yeah, that's a good point, and we are pulling for him. And I don't know why, because like the montage shows us a little bit, but like I think he's just like, I don't know, like good looking guy who seems to be doing the right thing. Like, is that why we pull for him? Because like when you look at Redeem, like I actually kind of like Jackson better. I wish, like, what movie is that if Jackson wins? Like his big doofy American buddy that's just slamming beers.
And his style is I hit people really hard on the top of the head.
Top of the head.
It's like Hacksaw Jim Dugan in the Muay Thai underground circuit.
Two-handed too. Everything's two-handed with him.
He lets himself get punched like a few times, and then he gets mad. That was so Jackson's first fight. He gets onto the mat, and he gets hit like 5 times, and he gets bloodied on his face. And there's this like 20 seconds of him just boiling over and getting really mad, and then he just runs up and bonks the guy on the top of the head like a whack-a-mole. And I was like, wait a minute, you weren't like psyched up enough before this, like,
right?
Let the Kumite, this guy's but it was like, oh, you hit me in the face. Now I'm mad.
No, it touches this.
And every time he hits somebody, he always automatically thinks he just won, no matter how he hits him. He's like, yeah, all right, Ricky, I win. Hey, Ricky.
He's not a double tap guy for sure.
No.
I love the scene because, frankly, the love interest in this movie is Jackson. I'm sorry. the Janice is like a side piece.
Yeah.
When they meet because they're playing a video game. It's a fighting video game, and I'm like,
karate video game.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this movie is just like putting a timestamp on itself.
So that video, it's funny. You were talking about the influence it has on like pop culture and other movies. Did you guys know? I didn't know this, but the Mortal Kombat, which is obviously an immensely, immensely popular game, it was like influenced by Bloodsport. And Johnny Cage in that movie is supposed to be like a JCVD character from Bloodsport. But that whole franchise took this. And it's one of those movies that it is what it is. And it's fun. And we have the villain, Chong Li, who's awesome, very menacing looking. It makes you, even though it's short, they don't expand the world a ton, but it makes you think like, man, I wonder what other kind of like this seemed like the riffraff. Like, yeah, Chong Li probably wins every time because everyone sucks.
So the answer to how could you make this movie with less story is Mortal Kombat the movie.
Yeah,
but it's the same movie, but with like sort of aliens and no story at all. It's just the fighting. Like at least here they try to give you this long backstory. He's got this connection. There's secondary characters. There is a script here.
They tried.
Yeah. Maybe 2 sentences per character in a scene, but It's fine. A couple of my favorite lines are definitely all from Jackson. One is, "I ain't your pal, bro." No, dick face. "I ain't your pal, dick face." Right. And then he goes at the very end, speaking of their love triangle that they have, "Anytime, any place, I'll be there." And he's like, "I love you, brother."
He literally says, "I love you."
Yeah,
it's like
Janice is over there saying, "Hey, what about me, guys? What is this?"
Yeah. it's kind of cute, is what it is. I think that I really enjoyed that they know what kind of movie they were making, so they just made it. Like there are extreme low angles in this movie, and it's like it just depends on who they want to look big at that moment. It's not even like sometimes Jean-Claude Van Damme is shot head on, but sometimes like when he's first facing down Chong Li, they have the camera like way up above his head, like it's on the ceiling or something, and then on Chong Li it's like the camera's like on his feet. They had to have him stand on an apple box. There's just a ton of these insane upward angles and slow-mo all over the place. It's not enough to watch a guy kick a guy. You have to watch him kick him in slow motion. And It's like many, not just the big one at the end, but like many times.
Yeah.
How tall is Jean-Claude Van Damme?
So I was actually looking at this. I thought he was much taller. JCVD is like
I think
5'10" and a half.
Oh, okay. He's a little taller than
I thought he was like 5'5". I thought he was like a Tom Cruise type.
Right.
But he's not. He's actually pretty big. Like, he's pretty big dude. And because he's actually one of the guys we're talking about, like, while we're watching, it's like, all right, realistically, these guys, whose ass could he probably kick? And we're like 3/4, probably. But JCVD, I could not kick JCVD's ass. I couldn't kick Chong Li's ass. But JCVD is a average to big big dude.
Well, so JCVD, he actually is a professional kickboxer and won many tournaments. Everybody knows this, right? You all know.
Tournaments.
No, he won.
He's
won
not credited for the secret tournaments.
But Frank Dukes, the real Frank Dukes, did all the fight choreography. And in that scene where Jean-Claude is fighting the one guy where they're doing the lat kick.
Yeah.
You know that guy. So he is a professional kickboxer too, and they had asked him to tone it down in order to make Jean-Claude Van Damme look good in that actual fight.
I believe it.
But it's just funny to me that Frank Dukes is this entire movie is made up about Frank Dukes, and the guy made up his own career doing all of that.
Well, if he's not a famous fighter, he's a good screenwriter.
Yeah,
I don't
think he actually wrote the screenplay though. I think it's based on stories that he told.
I know, I'm joking. I'm like, it's imaginary story. I'm like, great idea for a movie.
When I think of Frank, I think of Patches O'Houlihan from Dodgeball.
Okay,
that's like the personification I have. You can find pictures of him, but that's what I choose to.
I think probably the next most famous person looking back on it from 2020 that's in this movie is Forrest Whitaker. He's in this movie.
Yeah.
When Nick goes, I want to see a list of movies that Forrest Whitaker didn't do. Like, which one did he turn down?
Like, Forrest Whitaker, this is not our first Forrest Whitaker movie we've done for Film Flashback either, and like where he happens to be in it. He's better in this than he is in Species. But
he's prolific. He's 128 credits.
He will do anything. Like here, if you're listening out there and you're a writer or director, you want Forrest Whitaker to do your movie, just put it in space, and he's in. He will do it.
But it's not like he only. He does so many incredible good movies. Like he by the time this movie, he was actually, when he was real young, did Fast Times. And he was in The Color of Money and Platoon and
Good Morning Vietnam. Platoon when he was like 18 or younger.
Yeah.
And then the Bloodsport. And
then he does Bloodsport.
Natural progression.
Yeah.
He plays a cop who can't get a word in next to this other cop.
And when he does get a word in, he gets completely contradicted.
when they're interviewing the first person, so these two cops are trying to find Frank Dukes. When they're interviewing the first person, he starts pressing when they deny it, and he's like, "Hey, come on, we know you know." And the other cop interrupts him and rolls his eyes like he's a child and goes, "Never mind, we're done talking."
Thank you for your time.
Later on, they're interviewing somebody else trying to find out, hey, where's Frank Dukes? And Forrest Whitaker's character does the opposite. He goes, well, I guess we'll find him on our own. And that guy interrupts him again, except he presses this time. It's like, are you just contrarian? Did you just hate every time Forrest Whitaker gets to talk?
I like to talk last.
Forrest is at the very end. He's like, we're not letting you, we can't let you do this tournament. And the other guy like puts his hand and goes, please. All right. I think it's a bad idea, but of course we'll let you do it. Like, wait a minute.
Don't hurt yourself. Forrest looks at him and says, what the fuck am I doing here? Why don't I understand? And can I say something about these stun guns? They say 50,000 volts, and it looks like it's just pellets that go straight into somebody's chest. I've never seen those
early
before.
Tasers, yeah, where you had to hold it like a mini vacuum cleaner, like the Dustbuster. You had to hold it like that, and then you zap the guy that way.
You know, I would have liked to see, if they're going to bust those out twice, we needed to see them tase someone earlier.
Oh, yeah.
I will say.
Did like more of a thread or something.
Yeah, because I was like, John, I was like looking at it, I was like, what is that, a cell phone? Like, is that an 80s cell phone?
Also, we've watched Jean-Claude Van Damme kick people in the face from like 10 feet away in this movie, and he's standing like in one leg away from these two like out of shape dudes just holding these guns. I'm like, why doesn't he just kick them out of their hands? Like, it'd be super.
Let's kick him in the face. Or you know what he should do? Punch him in the nuts.
Oh.
But
how is that his? All right, let's talk about his move in this movie.
Let's talk about some of his fights. We could review a couple of fights.
Okay. First of all, he did 8 splits in the entire movie.
Oh, that's a good drinking game too.
There's 8. Yeah, he does 8 total splits in the movie.
I would have guessed more.
I know. After I read that and then I saw the movie, I thought, man, it seems like he does a hell of a lot.
Only 8.
I know.
He just holds them for 3 minutes each.
Exactly. Yeah. That lat kick is one of my favorite fights, and then the black guy that does the
guy that's just crawling around. Are you talking about? Are you talking about that?
Yeah,
the guy that kind of looks like tall Wayne Brady. He does look like Wayne Brady in the face.
Then he fights, and the guy's like,
yeah. See, I didn't get. I'm glad the guy that crawls around, like, I don't know what his deal is, but. That made no sense. He made it to the second round, guys. He made it way deeper than Turkey. He's like the 16 seed that runs a press.
To the second weekend. Yeah.
Yeah. He's running like the press that no one's seen all season, and they make it to the lead 8.
Yeah.
I like the last guy that just bear hugged him, and he was done. Because that guy was a joke.
That's who Frank Dukes then gives the uppercut to.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the best shot.
So in every good fighting movie like this, you have to have the hero fight someone who is just like a mountain of a human being, right? Like, you always have to have someone who's just playing big, to have to fight the crafty hero, because the hero is never the person who's 1,000 feet tall, because that wouldn't make for a compelling story. It's like, why he just goes around back into people. So this one always has it. So this one has it too, and he's fighting the guy, and eventually a lot of his blows aren't really doing anything. It's like he's not going to win this way. So he shows off his split again, which is like his signature move, and gives him the most thunderous anime-style uppercut directly between his legs, and that's how he wins the fight. Is the guy just goes down, and he's like dead with pain or something.
I would be.
He's like knocked out. He's blinded by the pain. And I was like, how did this make it all the way through every step of the movie making process?
For the editing process?
Who demanded that stay in?
First of all, Frank Dukes' powerful punch broke a bottom brick, for fuck's sake. So it's going to kill that guy. It's going to go straight up.
Yeah. Oh yeah, his heart he punches him
prostate.
He gives him a shot to the coin purse in his throat.
Right in the prison pocket, the old Frank Dukes move.
I could not believe that stayed in the movie. I was like, how nobody could watch that and not laugh, right?
You know what's one thing about this movie we haven't talked about is, like, so I remember watching this on VHS. It was in '88. but I remember watching it probably early 90s or so. I definitely did not see this like right when it came out, I don't think. But first of all, you want to fight your siblings afterwards, and you want to kickbox each other.
Yeah,
Second of all, you're like,
do this remotely because I would be punching the.
Oh my god, we'd be like, oh, see if you can hit my hand. Hey, see if you can break this brick. Hey, punch me in the nuts. If you're watching this on VHS, you see the movie. Let's say you saw it in like 1990. You see Bloodsport, like maybe your uncle shows it to you. Like, oh man, that was sweet. He goes, yeah, get this. Movie called Kickboxer comes out a year later, and it's like the same people and like almost the same plot.
Yeah.
What are the specs on? I mean, not to get away from Bloodsport. What are the specs on Kickboxer? $1 million made, probably $65 million in gross, and I think Jean-Claude Van Damme had to, in his writer, he has to scream out no for an elongated period of time for his next 3 movies after that. His no,
yeah,
whenever he's flexed. He has to have slow motion so that we can all appreciate the veins. You know, it was like, wait a minute, why does that have to be in slow motion?
Yeah.
He's just yelling. Mm-hmm. And it's like, nope, it has to be. Yeah.
I mean, he is in incredible shape. If you watch the montage, it's like, can't do that, can't do that, can't do that.
Do you mean the training montage?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Or when they showed us the training montage again later in snippets.
In the final match. The training montage in the final match.
and that, you know, again, I do think this is like they're going for the guys that watch 30-second beer commercials are like, we got to remind these guys that they're like these guys are here for a match. And Clay, I didn't think about they maybe had planned for this to go to TNT or cable or something with a commercial. It's definitely set up for a commercial break. And honestly, maybe that's where I first saw it. I think I saw it on VHS, but like it could have easily been on cable, and it was definitely TNT or TBS, by the way.
So I was watching a interview with Jean-Claude Van Damme, and he was like, well, yeah, I mean, the movie, they just did like a small release in a few theaters in like LA or New York or whatever, and they were planning to just have it go for a short while and then just put it on video. But then people started going, and they had to kind of like, hey, hold off releasing the video. We kind of want to put it in more theaters and like give it an extended run. It was like surprising how it was doing well. But their whole plan was, sure. It'll be in the movie theaters for like a little bit so that it's not direct to video. And then, you know, we'll just put it on video. But it was like, oh, surprise, it's making real money. Let's maybe like open up more theaters. So they were planning from the beginning. It's like when Disney used to make the sequels to their, it was like the sequel to Aladdin or the sequel to Beauty and the Beast. It was never supposed to go to the theaters. So they just, you know.
I was trying to think of a good example of what cost a little bit and made a ton. So Get Out, which is widely regarded as like a fantastic movie, killed it. Budget was 4.5 and made 176. So a little more budget and made like way more than it's saying. I don't want to say it's the equivalent of that from a monetary perspective, but it quadrupled it way more than that its budget. And like you would think that the director would have made a couple more movies. Like I know I would have tried.
Yeah, there's a lot of horror. There's a lot of horror movies that do that.
Yeah.
That end up, you know, really over earning their budget. Like the first Saw was one of those movies and things like that.
For one reason or another, though, not necessarily because the movie's good, but also because the movie can be absolutely horrible, and people will just go see it.
Okay, so it's worth noting though, because if you make an action movie now, this style of action movie is not exactly in vogue anymore. And I think if you needed a bunch of special effects, you needed a bunch of guns, and you needed somebody to have a rocket launcher, and you just needed you needed to travel to exotic locations, then the movie gets super expensive super fast. But this is a movie that's basically a stunt show on film. And we're just there to watch Jean-Claude Van Damme and these other people perform incredible stunts, like fighting stunts. And so that's what keeps the movie at that modest budget, because there's no explosions in this movie. You know,
I wanted more blood. I wanted more blood out of Bloodsport.
I was saying that during the movie, there's not enough blood on the mat.
That mat should be covered in blood.
Yeah, right. Like somebody should have had their head taken off.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there was a pretty gruesome leg break in there.
I was gonna say the goriest they
So
got.
let me.
Leg break.
Oh yeah, that was pretty gross. So let me ask you this, like, and to your point, yeah, there's like people go to see the live effect and like these crazy things people can do. Do you think Bloodsport today is like a victim of its own success back in the day? Because that influenced Mortal Kombat. Now we have these fighting games that it's like it's not okay just to like punch and kick. Like you got to have a spear and freeze people or like all this crazy stuff. And so if people go see a movie that's about a fight, like Karate Kid is a great story. It's less about the fight as it was about fantastically written movie. Different story. We remember the fighting scenes from that. But this is a fighting movie. And so I agree. I don't think they'd be able to make that today because I think it influenced these video games. And these video games ruin the ability to make another movie like Bloodsport that doesn't have all these effects in them.
I think people would be disappointed. And now that the technology is better, though, people are only expecting something like that. I mean, you didn't have the technology back then to be able to have a ball of fire and then shoot it at somebody, you know?
It would have looked really bad if they did. They could have done it, but it would have looked like crap.
Right.
We probably wouldn't have the same, because we talk about this a lot because we watch a lot of, obviously, older movies. And one thing continuously we talk, if you use CGI and visual effects that are computer generated, they don't hold up. If they're practical, they at least hold up to way more to an extent than, because computer maybe has a 10-year lifespan. We've got something better, you know. But this movie probably holds up. It's still on Netflix now because it's a fighting movie and it's interesting and it's short, and you know, I think people get into it.
Yeah, even if it looks, because. You know, if you watch a James Bond and you watch a car do a barrel roll in the air over a river, maybe the movie in general doesn't hold up for you, but it's like even 30 years later, you're like, that's a real car really doing a barrel roll over a river. It doesn't get like boring. You know, you're like, you're impressed. Even if it takes you out of the story or you're not in the story, you're still amazed again by like the stunt show aspect of it all.
Right.
And watching this, it's just like, all right, so I understand it's a movie, but he really jumped that high. He's really doing those splits. And so it's still entertaining to watch because it's almost like watching extreme gymnastics. You know,
you're
just impressed. You just want to go like, oh wow.
To add on that too is that in all the fights you can see the choreography of it. The people watching them step around their feet and everything. That's not something that's just you pick up and do. Those guys have been training to do that sort of thing. So it takes a lot of skill and talent.
I don't think there's a lot of actors in this to that point. Like I think it's a lot of fighters, and then there's a few actors. Jackson, we could probably say, is not an actual Muay Thai guy.
He does zero karate moves in the entire movie.
He does zero. No. This is Jean-Claude Van Damme's breakout.
Walks around like the Big Show, and then just bops people on the head.
There's like maybe 5 actual actors, and the rest, even Chong Li is an actual Muay Thai fighter that used to train with Jean-Claude.
I mean, he's got 5 lines, 6 lines in the entire movie.
I couldn't tell if it was dubbed though. Because I will say, if it's dubbed, they did a good job. And if it wasn't dubbed, he did a really good job of his accent and his 5 lines are better than Jean-Claude's.
Both. You mean the guy playing Chong Li? I think.
Yeah.
I noticed. I think it was dubbed, but it doesn't.
I think it was probably dubbed,
but also the kid when they play the kid playing young Jean-Claude Van Damme has like he does sound like Jean-Claude, which is nice. I like that Roy Chow, who plays Tanaka, who I recognized as Lao She from Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom. You know, I was like, nice try, Lao She. He sounds more American than Jean-Claude does, which is.
Let's go back real quick to young Jean-Claude Van Damme. Can we talk about?
Yeah.
We have to talk about. This would not be film flashback. We didn't address that young Jean-Claude Van Damme is wearing a San Francisco Giants hat and a New York Giants sweatshirt. 2 teams, two different sports in 2 different cities.
Here's the thing. I did a little research on this.
Shame them. You did research on this? Go for it.
He wanted to feel like a giant, so he just wanted to get all Giants apparel.
Is a character choice? Because he was an immigrant.
It was a human choice. So it was what Jean-Claude Frank Dukes, as a young child, always wanted to feel extremely giant, and because he always felt really small, so he bought everything that he could that had the word giant on it.
Sounds like a giant douche.
I just made everything up.
I was going to say
that is true.
Typical Frank Dukes fashion.
That makes none of sense.
But I feel like they auditioned one kid that looked like Jean-Claude Van Damme when he was younger and said, "That's it."
I didn't even think he looked like him. I feel like I sneezed for a second. I'm like, wait, is that young Jean-Claude Van Damme? I don't know.
So his whole character, and the reason why he's dead set, he basically gets himself court-martialed just to go fight in this tournament. It's the most serious thing ever. There's like 30 minutes of this, incredible backstory, building it all up. And the reason really why he's doing it is mostly for Tanaka, who was his trainer. And they build it up like he's surrogate dad, because Jean-Claude Van Damme's character, Frank, is basically... He defends this guy's son, but then the son tragically dies, and he steps in, and now I'm going to be the son. And he's on the Tanaka's deathbed. He's passionately talking like, "I will do this for you." And I'm like, wait a minute. He's got a dad. They showed him in that other scene. Jean-Claude Van Damme, Frank has two parents. They're in that other scene, and they're immigrants, and they're like, "Well, I guess we'll let you train our son," But then they never come back.
Hello, Jean-Claude.
What? There's no scene with them. What? You're going to go to Hong Kong for a fight? Yes, I have to do it for this father figure. It's like, I'm your dad.
What about me? What about me?
Don't ruin my motivation. By the way, I only have one thing on my notes that I didn't talk about. Do you guys know Jean-Claude Van Damme's real name?
No.
Yes, but
Jean-Claude Camille Francois Van Herenberg. Can we say that again?
Why
Jean-Claude Camille Francois Van Varenberg.
Why would you change that? I don't know. I don't think you should change that.
Rolls off the tongue.
It really does.
It fits on the marquee in 4 lines.
He's very popular in Brussels.
Well, if you're the sort of person who likes a good pec flex or an awesome montage or a chase scene or somebody getting bopped on the head and people dying in combat,
I have a chase scene too.
This is the movie for you.
A happy chase scene.
Oh yeah, that chase scene was hilarious. It was like,
Hey, I think it holds up though. It holds up as you know what you're getting into. It's going to be an '80s fight movie. It's it's not the best of the best. It's not Karate Kid. It's Bloodsport. It's a kickboxing movie about this underground circuit.
It's not the most racially sensitive movie in the world, but
light on plot, heavy on
what you're
text.
getting into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts on Bloodsport there, Johnny?
Well, I know I'm probably just going to go watch it again. It's like one of those movies that you don't turn off when it's on cable. You might have it you'll put it on in the background and be like, oh yeah, and then you'll quote the lines. I think I said 2 quotes when we were talking during the movie.
Bloodsport, kid.
Yeah, and there's not much blood. That was not very good. But
break my record. Now I break you.
Yes,
like I
break your friend. That's my
light bruising sport.
Yes. I mean, speaking of that light bruising makeup sport, I mean, the ending makeup scene was just quite...
I bet they had him covered up more, and he's like, "You cannot see my face like this." And they took it off.
Yeah,
no.
Yeah, he's in the hospital visiting his friend. He's like, "Do I have to wear a shirt?" Yes,
Okay, fine. But next scene, I don't.
I show my butt the next scene.
It just makes me want to do the splits. To really stretch and do
one for us right now.
You should.
Oh God, I can't.
Something to work on. You got a month.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, listen. By the time we get out of quarantine, my ass will be doing some splits, and we'll revisit this.
Well, you
cool.
heard it here.
This is recorded. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh goodness gracious!
Hey guys, I love you.
Anytime, any place.
Anytime. All right, this is a lot of fun. We want to thank everybody for tuning in and watching and listening to the podcast. Nick, tell them where they can find Handlebar.
That was my finger splint. You can find us at Handlebar TV on YouTube. The podcast will be available tomorrow morning on Spotify, on iHeartRadio and Apple Podcasts. And of course, thank you for watching live. If you did, it's going to be available on YouTube as soon as we're done. If you missed it, if you jumped in late, want to catch up, see what you missed. And also, Bloodsport streaming free on Netflix. So if you haven't seen it or you haven't seen it in a while, check it out.
You got to check it out.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks again. Tune in 2 more days. We're going to do another one of these with a different guest. Thank you again, John Hagley, for joining us. And we will see you next time.
Jean-Claude Van Hagley. Later.